Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 554.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because we are going to talk about something that, well, it's actually a new concept if you really think about it. But most importantly, many of us can mistakenly think that that's the one thing we're supposed to be chasing, doing, trying to make happen, when in actuality, today's guest would say that you don't need to. What am I talking about? Well, he's written a book called Don't Save for Retirement. And I'm, of course, talking about Daniel Emeduri. You may know him from Future Money Trends. Now, what's exciting to me is that we're talking about future money trends, not past. Oftentimes, when you are introduced to someone who's talking about money in some way, shape, or form, they spend an inordinate amount of time talking about how money used to be, which is helpful, gives you context, but doesn't necessarily tell you what you could do today to prepare. So what I'm excited for is that you and we're going to be able to ask him very deep questions and learn and listen and hopefully implement one or two things that allows you and I to put ourselves in a completely different position. Because here's the thing. It's a choice. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to get ready to listen. We're going to take some notes. And yes, I know if you're walking the dog or doing the dishes, I know you probably got that on, or maybe you're on the treadmill right now. Good for you. But I also want you to give your undivided attention to Daniel Emeduri. Daniel, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for that intro, Jay.
I'm glad that you are able to make the time to be here because I'm excited. I always like talking about money and cash flow very specifically, but I think you and I are going to have a lot to talk about today. Now, this is your first time here. Because it's your first time here, I have to ask you the same question I tend to ask everybody else the first time that they're here. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. You know, Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, Hulk, etc. You get the idea. Because I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. For example, as an entrepreneur, I can envision myself flying around town using our products and services and saving our customers one sale at a time. Also, like a superhero though, an entrepreneur has a beginning. So if you think about Spider-Man, for example, there was a time where he was just a kid, going to school, doing his own thing, taking some photos. Then one day he gets bit by a spider, discovers he has a superhuman ability, and now he has to choose to use it for good or for evil. So my question to you is as follows. Before Future Money Trends, before your newsletter with nearly 150,000 subscribers, before all of your television appearances, before all of the things that people know you for today, what we want to know is, who is Daniel Emeduri?
I'm a guy who was always fascinated with money. And ever since I was a little boy, entrepreneurship, investing. I mean, as young as 5 years old, my mom has tons of stories of me getting in trouble at school for selling pencils a penny less than the teacher was selling them for people who forgot them. One day my mom woke up and she saw a bunch of cars slowing down in front of her house, and she came running out and she told me that it's because I had dragged all this stuff out of the garage and I was selling it. I never had a desire for money because I wanted materialism. I was always just fascinated with it. To me, it was more like a video game. And it was just, something that you could keep a score with for yourself as far as how much you could make or what you could do with it. And it was just fun. And later in life, it became a realization that I would need money to be free. We're all told we're born free in the United States, but really to be free, I need to wake up when I'm done sleeping. I need to go to bed whenever I want, and I need to be able to just go wherever I want. I want to be able to just be free to go about my day and about my business. And everybody listening to the show realizes that unless you're financially independent, you really don't have that choice. And so that's something that I highly desired. And I mean, right out of high school at 18 years old, I bought my first rental property, and I just was hungry to do this, to become financially independent as soon as possible. In 2008, that was completely derailed. And 11 years ago, 12 years ago, or 11 years ago, it was 2008. I was unemployed. I had foreclosures left and right. Lost all the money that I had made, and lost my confidence so much where I gave up on this idea of even trying to be rich. And within 6 months, like probably late 2008, I got a job at a grocery store. I was making $11 an hour, and just really gave up. And I'm lucky that I have my wife, my high school sweetheart, because she never stopped encouraging me, and she never stopped supporting me in every way possible. So, I mean, she had to go through those unfortunate months where I would be like depressed and, sleeping a lot while she was going to work as a teacher. But that's who I was before I started Future Money Trends.
Well, okay. And this is what I love, because I get the privilege in my position to talk to a number of individuals across the globe who are doing really large things. And we consistently run into the part of the story where there's this downturn, or there's this thing that happens, this transformational event. But before we go through that, I just want to make sure I heard this correctly. Did you say you were undercutting your own teacher by a penny?
Yeah, the teacher was selling pencils for 10 cents. And so I just started asking my mom for pencils. I was like, I need more pencils. And I'd take them to school and I'd sell them for 9 cents.
Yes. Okay. I absolutely love this already. He's like, not only did you take that captive market, you were trying to gain market share at the same time. So, okay. All right.
And my cost was zero because my mom was buying them.
Right. Totally. Oh my goodness. This is good. Okay. This is good. And funny at the same time. That's a unique one. So, but here's my I guess my question. Now, we're obviously going to talk about a lot of what you've been able to accomplish. But I'm curious to know, the you of today, is it possible for you, who you are today, the choices you have in front of you today, is that version of you possible without everything that happened in 2008, even including all of the less than positive emotions and the getting the job, all of that? Is it even possible?
No. And I actually have something written in front of me in my home office. I have a lot of different things written all over my walls. I had a painter come in, put some things up. But one of them that I'm looking at right now, it says, everything in life is a gift. Even the worst things have always led to the best blessings of my life. Yeah. And that is really what happened. Without 2008, without that crash, I don't even know what would have happened. And honestly, I might have been burned more so later, because when I bought my first property in 2000 at 18, that was at the very start of the real estate boom. So you can imagine by 06, I'm like thinking I'm a genius, and I'm still very young. Yeah. Because real estate, every house I owned was going up $10,000 a month in California. So, who knows what would have happened? I mean, it could have been even more devastating as far as the crash. But luckily, I was young, and there was still a lot of time to start over.
Yes. Now let's talk about that for a second, because I know there's a lot of individuals who feel like retirement is looming, or they feel like I missed my shot, or they go, it's too late for me. Maybe they've gone to a financial planner, because this one's always famous. They go to a financial planner and says, well, if you had started saving $50 a month when you were 18, then this is what you could have done. And it's like, well, that's wonderful, but I'm no longer 18. And so I'm curious to know, when it comes down to it, do you think, I mean, people have missed their opportunity?
For the most part, no, because most of them are not embracing the ideas that you're teaching and talking about. I mean, most people might have 50 or 60K in their 401k and they're 60 years old, which is not enough for retirement, but they could easily convert that and start buying cash flowing investments. They could buy, either an individual rental property, or they can convert it to other real estate related cash flow investments or other cash flow related investments. But most people aren't even utilizing the things they have in front of them to become financially independent. And that is one thing that I talk about heavily in the book, and Don't Save for Retirement, is that is one of my biggest frustrations, is that this acceptance that we're just going to kick the can down the road 30 to 40 years, all this delayed gratification deferred life. And I think, honestly, if most people, whether you're 50 years old or 60 years old or 30 years old, if you just shift and start buying cash flow within 12 months, I think you could potentially already be being on the road to financial independence, where your cash flow could start to pay bills.
Yeah. And that was a lesson, though. I didn't learn that lesson until, what happens, my wife, when she's pregnant, she has a condition known as hyperemesis. She couldn't eat or drink. I punctured my lung. I was born with asthma. I could not walk and talk simultaneously. I was in this situation to where we still needed to work, but I couldn't physically go do anything, and neither could she. So we had to find a way, like, how do you earn money if you can't physically go to work? I wasn't taught that in school, that there was another way to earn money. So I guess my question is, if you were to think about right now, what would you say are the top 3 things that you have learned on your way to 7 figures that you could have never learned, or would have never learned, or have never learned in any sort of formal education whatsoever?
Well, you could probably do 100 of them, because if all of us think about it, school never teaches us anything about personal finance. And I'm even shocked that I talk to people who have business degrees or finance degrees, and they'll tell me, and I didn't even know that, and they'll tell me that, look, even in those environments, we never cover personal finance at all.
Right.
And they just kind of give you this standardized thing, like, here, you're going to, get a job with benefits, and then you're going to throw money in a 401k, and, hopefully this all works out, even though it didn't work out for the baby boomers. I personally think the top 3 things that formal education doesn't teach that they definitely should teach is just getting down to the basics. Is, what are you going to do with the income you make? How do you spend it? You have to spend less than you make. I mean, simple stuff, right? You need to buy things that actually make you money. It's horrible that everybody has been conned into just buying things that hopefully they'll go up. Why not be relentless about buying things that, bring in checks? We have this 1 to 2 household income mentality. Why not have a 21 to 50 household income? I love sending all these George Washingtons and Ben Franklins to work, and their job is to bring back friends. So that's, the 2 things, basic, like, just how are you going to maintain a sustainable life? Because it's not by copying everybody else and your parents and financing a car for 7 years and, just having never-ending debt and borrowing all this money for college. And then probably the third thing that traditional schools will never teach people, and that is how to simply buy an investment. They never actually analyze what is a good rate of return, what is a yield. Even the most basic things. How do you value a business, or how do you value a house? I mean, or let's say a duplex, or which is a little easier, instead of just going by, okay, well, the last guy was willing to pay $400 for the house, so I guess it'll appraise for $400, so that means I should be able to buy it.
Right.
What the hell does that mean? Like, break down the numbers. Why is a duplex that makes $1,000 a month worth 400? Because it's not. But find me a duplex that's selling for $120,000 that makes $1,000 a month. Okay, now we're talking. Now the numbers make sense. So I think, really, unfortunately, I don't have any kind of like secret thing that the schools are not teaching. The problem is they're not teaching anything.
They don't make it hard, is what you're saying. It's like it's easy to come up with something that is missing from that particular environment, and yeah, that's exactly what I'm keying in on. Now, you've figured that out to a greater degree than many. So I guess the question becomes, what happens in your story that somehow between 2008 and 2019, did a magic fairy show up? What was it? What was that path? How did that transformation happen into the superhero you are today?
Like many people, there was no plan. We were
Preach
actually
that.
in 2008, we were in a bankruptcy attorney's office, and my wife really didn't want to file bankruptcy, and because we had this one duplex left that it was like that last hope, like, hey, let's not lose this one piece of property that we have. This is all we've got left. And so we ended up not filing bankruptcy. Well, funny thing is that duplex ended up teaching me a great lesson. That property went from $120,000 to $60,000 in the crash. And the rents actually went up because a lot of people came in as renters that were former homeowners. So what that taught me right there was that cash flow trumps appreciation. And even in the worst housing crisis of the last 100 years, maybe the worst housing crisis ever in the United States, it didn't matter. The cash flow was able to it was not only protected us, but it actually grew, which was shocking. So that was a change in mindset on how we were going to invest from now on. So from that day on, we only bought things that made us money. The criteria was easy. It was, will this send a check either this month or on a quarterly basis? And the next step we took was we didn't want to ever be poor. We didn't want to risk falling, where we couldn't afford anything. So we slashed spending, and we did ridiculous things to cut spending. So keep in mind, we're not even trying to become financially independent or wealthy. We are just trying to build a massive buffer between us and poverty. And we actually called it our financial moat. And the goal of the financial moat was us having all of our expenses paid by these other sources of income. And if you're spending $10,000 a month, that seems like a tough hill to climb. So what we did is we moved from an area where the average home was probably $500,000, and we moved to an area in California. Believe it or not, we were able to find. Now this is 2009 when everything had collapsed. But we moved to an area where we actually bought a house for $95,000. I mean, we were living in an area where the median income was $28,000, and this is in California. So we were in a desert, and we were doing everything we could to slash expenses. And what happened was, over the course of 2 to 3 years, we ended up having the expenses so low that the cash flow actually could pay for our expenses within about 3 years. And this is us with a high savings rate. But then that opened up new opportunities. If your cash flow pays for your expenses, all of a sudden, okay, well, now I can start snowballing new income into more investments. And all of a sudden, now your passive income continues to grow. And that's how ultimately I get where I am today, where, I live a very free life, and, me and the kids and my wife are able to travel all around the world in luxury. And it's all because of those early days where we really just sucked it up, cut expenses dramatically so that we could buy as much cash flow as possible.
And that's exactly what I too learned about real estate. And but what I like about real estate is that it's a pre-packaged piece of cash flow once you begin to understand it. And it's how I look at everything. And indeed, it's how the name of the company, Cashflow Diary, and everything else we do came to be, because that's ultimately what we do is collect streams of income. I mean, we can be asset agnostic all day long, so long as whatever we purchase, buy, or invest our time, money, effort, and energy in produces continual income without us working. And again, it's at the basis of tragedy, not being able to eat or drink and sleep and all these other things. I like how you said that you were building a buffer between you and poverty. It's like, that's all I was trying to do. I wasn't trying to do anything other than that. And because I see something similar, I tell people, look, I was just trying to eat. That's all I wanted. I wanted food. That would be great. And if we've got that, then cool, we're good. So I guess as you've continued on the journey, is it all real estate, or what else is out there? Where else have you found the ability to, well, because here's what's going through my head.
Sure.
You're going to write a book that says don't save for retirement. People instantly, I think there's two camps. There's the people who are like, absolutely no, Dan, you don't know what you're talking about. And then there's the people like, okay, that sounds great to me because I couldn't do it anyway. So what do I do? So what would you say to either one of those? All right, everybody. Thanks for listening, and I'm glad that you are enjoying what you are hearing thus far. But here's one of the things that's really important. One of the most important things that you can do is get started. One of the things that I've said before, and I say again, once you get started, stay started. But more importantly, there can be lots of roadblocks to getting started. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove one of those roadblocks for you and make it a little bit easier. Because the thing that I don't want to stop you is thinking, do I need a local number? How about a long distance number? Or should it be 800? How on earth am I going to make that happen so that people can contact me as I'm out there building my business, making my cash flow grow? But most importantly, understanding that it doesn't have to be difficult. Many of you may know, but if you don't, there's a company out there by the name of Grasshopper. And what I want you to do is I want you to go over to trygrasshopper.com/cashflow diary. Grasshopper is the entrepreneur's phone system. It works like a traditional phone system, but requires no hardware to purchase, no software to install. It's just a number that flat works. So if you are out there building that distributed workforce across many different locations, it's a way for you to still go out there and make your number be unified, simple, easy to use, something we've been using for quite some time. So again, go over to trygrasshopper.com/cashflow diary. Now, let's get back to the rest of the story.
I share a lot of the links in the book and at futuremoneytrends.com, of course. But for the audience who's interested, my favorite things is real estate, but there are a lot of other cash flow ideas. I have invested money. I have loaned money to lots of different groups, whether it's somebody who is looking for consumer loans through crowdfunding or private equity, as well as mortgage notes. Commercial loans as well as business loans. And again, with crowdfunding, all you're doing is you're investing in the things that institutions and insurance companies have done forever. But it just, in 2012, it became legal for the little guy to actually get involved in a lot of these real estate backed ones. So that's the low hanging fruit. You could buy a dividend paying stock, but instead of just rolling it in, you actually treat that cash flow for income and roll it into something else if you want to compound it. But a lot of people have gotten into this habit of just, letting the dividends, buying the stock, no matter what price it is, right? Like it could be at an all-time high, and they're allowing that to happen. I really like single-family homes and multifamily under 4 units. I've done very well with those because you get the cash flow, and as a side, you probably could get some appreciation over the years. And a lot of times you'll end up selling them, because you'll do the math and you'll say, look, the property's got $200,000 in equity. It's going to take 20 years to make this in cash flow. Let's just lock this whole thing in and roll it into something bigger and better. Most recently, most of my cash flow investments are into private equity, where you're buying fairly large buildings like or developments like a JW Marriott or a Costco. But anybody can get involved with those, either if you're a credit investor or not accredited. If you're accredited, you might have a better selection of some of the private equity funds who've been around for 100 years. If you're not accredited, there's still other ones out there that are in the crowdfunding space, like a Fundrise. And, those are the ones that are kind of like my go-to ones. But, I would tell people this, your biggest cash flow that you're going to do is the things that you're familiar with, the things you understand. So there are all sorts of businesses and industries, and you may understand that, hey, in my own business, there's a way for me to monetize or use my skills and knowledge as leverage. I know I'm not an expert in cannabis, but I have invested and loaned a lot of cannabis companies money. So I really like the lending business, just because that is, again, it goes back to what are the insurance companies doing, what are the banks doing, and what are the richest people on the planet doing? And if you look at what they're focused on preservation and cash flow. You look at what we're taught or what the middle class is assumed to do. It's all focused on speculation. So those are probably my favorite cash flowing investments.
So let me address what is probably like the person who's on the treadmill right now, or the person who's listening this far, possibly getting a little irritated, because here's what they're saying. And if they were right now here talking to you, they'd probably get, in your face and say something to the effect of, "But Daniel, how do I even get the money to do that? That's the problem I'm having." And what would you say to that person?
Well, I cut spending dramatically. First of all, there's a 99% chance you're living a life that is not normal, but it is perceived as normal. I mean, if you make $50,000 a year or $100,000 a year, and you have a $50,000 year car, I mean, that's ridiculous. The only way in order to do it the way I did it, you'd have to have a year to 2 years of some sacrifice in your lifestyle. And that means you're going to have to go against societal norms. You cannot have a financed vehicle for 8 years that is equal to your annual income. You cannot be buying a house that is 7 times your annual income. You shouldn't be paying for a rental that you can afford. You should be paying for a rental that is below what you can afford. Whether it's cutting back at restaurants and doing very meaningful things to cut back. Look, I did crazy things. I mean, people hate when I say this, but my wife and I had dogs that had $150 a month in medical bills that are wiener dogs, and we gave them to a very nice home. They got taken care of. But I got rid of my dogs to cut spending.
Wow.
I mean, at the time, this is 10 years ago, so it's not as important now. But we got rid of DirecTV and all this stuff. Now, I mean, today you could just jump on somebody else's Netflix account and have free TV. But I mean, we really cut to the bone. So I mean, if you're listening to this right now, the biggest expense you have is where you live. So you can either move another 20 minutes out or 40 minutes out, or if you're really lucky and you're more mobile, you can move out of state and really slash your expenses. So that's the first thing I would tell people is cut spending, because that's the fastest way to free up some money so that you can go out and buy yourself some cash flow.
And so that we're clear, for those of you listening in California, that's when he said move out of state, that he was really talking to you. Okay. Now you guys in New York, you could also do that same thing. Same with Hawaii. You guys, but the choice is, somewhere in the middle. It's much less expensive. Now, with all of those things, though, it almost sounds like you're saying, Daniel, that it's not really so much about earning more money.
Well, in the initial phases, you'll actually be able to achieve financial independence. And again, this is not, Puff Daddy on a yacht financial I'm talking about just to be able to say, you know what, I feel very good about my life because everything I make at work, my active income, is above and beyond my basic needs, my basic utilities, my groceries, my lights, my what do I need? Now, that is just an inflection point, really, because if you make it there, it's actually going to start snowballing and compounding on you very quickly, and you will become very wealthy within a few years from that date. But look, another thing, it also frees you up when I tell people become financially independent. Let's say you hate your job, but you make great money.
Yeah, that's not very hypothetical for most of the people listening right now, but okay, let's just say that.
Wouldn't it be nice if the passive income paid for your basic needs so you could actually go out and do certainly something that you love doing, but maybe it pays a lot less? Maybe it's a job, maybe it's a hobby business. I spoke to a recent subscriber who was like, I quit my architect job. They were making like 175K. I mean, great money. But because they became financially independent, they're like, I'm actually going to go start being a yoga teacher. And they're like, this is like my life. I love it. And they're like, I'm going to make like 40K a year, but I'm happy. And, so I think people, in this journey, they can't just be looking at the numbers because they kind of just, have this imaginary number out there that you need $10 million or something to be happy. For most people, they can be happy on a lot less, but they're not even asking themselves what makes them happy. So what do they actually want in life? What is their values? Which is a very important thing. I mean, do you value your time? If you're sitting in traffic for 3 hours a day and you barely see your kids and you barely see your wife, I would say that I don't even have to ask you if you value your time. You don't value your time. Now, maybe you're in that situation right now and you're saying, no, Dan and Jay, I do value my time. Well, then it's up to you to do something about it, because you're going to have to make those changes, and you're going to have to decide what it is that you're willing to do. I mean, are you willing to cash out that 401k, pay the 10% penalty, have everyone tell you you're doing the wrong thing, including your CPA, and say, you know what, instead of that, I'm going to put this $40,000 into something that'll make me $4,000 a year. And a lot of people will tell you that's not a lot of money. Yeah, sure, that's not a lot of money right now. But keep doing stuff like that, and it starts to stack up on itself. And you don't realize how much you could just relieve your life if you just made an extra $1,000 a month in your life. Imagine what that would do for you, either enhancing your life or just having your basic utilities paid. I mean, I started small and then it grew big. So many people, they don't even start because they're just staring at this thing and like, how am I going to get so rich that I have a 75-foot boat? Look, focus on just how are you going to pay the water bill without you working for it? And then start saying, how am I going to pay the electric bill without me working for it? How am I going to stop paying for everything where it requires me to exchange my time for everything I do? Because I'll tell you one thing, if people started thinking like that, when you eat, let's say you go out and have a nice dinner for $100, how much time did that take? You had a $100 dinner, great. We all love $100 dinners. I actually like much higher expensive dinners. I like the wine to be that. And but you got to ask yourself, really, what are you doing? You're spending 3 hours to have a dinner that lasts 5 minutes, or you're spending maybe 5-6 hours to go to the gym. I mean, like, what are you doing when you what is your money? What is the time worth for you? So I think those are the questions people need to ask themselves as they start this journey to really focus on becoming financially independent, as opposed to just saying, hey, I'm just going to work like a slave for the next 40 years. And hopefully, even though evidence points to it totally not working, hopefully the retirement dream will work for me. And I say it doesn't work because, as you noted in the intro, retirement is relatively new. And the fact that it didn't work for the baby boomers who had the best bond market, best stock market, best real estate market, and a massive inheritance that came from their parents when they passed. And it still didn't work. Most baby boomers are living impoverished lives, or the ones that were successful in retirement, they live like peasants for their whole life. And now all of a sudden they're supposed to spend money, which none of them are, because their brains are conditioned into scarcity.
And what's interesting about that is what I hear underneath everything is that there's a fundamental habit structure or character structure that you were trained in, voluntarily, involuntarily, however we get trained in it, we get trained. Okay. And following that same practice just leads to, for lack of a better way of putting it, a surplus. And then it becomes understanding what to do with that surplus in some way, shape, or form. Now I have a question for you, because I want to hear the story, because I know I have one about that transition period of wanting to move everything to some sort of passive or residual income, where I wanted an update for my phone at the time, and the update was only $20. So in the vein of talking about starting small, but I wouldn't let myself get the update until the $20 was earned from a source of passive income. And I never worked harder for $20 in my entire life to try to figure out how to build it. And yeah, I did the same thing. It was a single family house, and it ended up being a little more than $200 a month is what was created from it. But it was just, it was ironic that you said what you just said, because it's that process that is that continually leads into compound. And I'm curious to hear, like, what were some of those smaller things, like you're talking about an electric bill or phone bill, etc. What were some of those smaller things that were your targets when you were first looking at that transition?
Yeah, initially I wanted to just see if I could get the utilities and the grocery bill paid. So I mean, it was very reasonable, right? I've got to get my passive income to about $1,000 a month to pay for the utilities, because we had very low utility bills, and get the grocery bills. So I mean, I set a very low goal, low target, and then ultimately we began to pay off a lot of debt. And my wife sold her wedding ring so we could pay off the cars. That freed up more cash flow. I know a lot of people are not for paying off debt, but I believe the math does not make sense actually to pay off a mortgage. But there's something that you cannot calculate, and that is the feeling of wealth, the comfort of wealth. And again, because I wanted to make sure that nothing ever bad could happen, and I had been burned so badly from being over leveraged in '08, that was just part of my DNA at that point. So, initially we just wanted to get these small things paid, but ultimately we got the house paid off, which can be people could say, hey, why were you paying off a 4% mortgage when you can make 10% of cash flow? I get it. Math doesn't make sense, but that's what I did because I needed to do it for my own comfort, because I had been so scared of becoming poor.
Right.
So that's what I did. I'm not certainly advising anybody else to do it. Do what is your comfort level. But we started very small, and then once that was done, then that's the fun part. The fun part is once you actually meet those small goals and get some of those utility bills paid, and don't have this car bill hanging over your head because you bought a car you can afford. Look, I'll tell you, we were financially independent, and I drove a 2003 Nissan Altima. And then even when we hit millionaire status, which, by the way, I hope everybody realized that I was not a millionaire when I became financially independent, but even when we became a millionaire, I was still driving the 2003 Nissan Altima. And then, eventually we became comfortable in our wealth, and we bought some very nice, or leased some very nice cars. And today I'm almost come full circle. Now today I'm Ubering only. I got rid of my car in May when the lease was up, and I was like, let me try Ubering only for how long it lasts. And I love it. Last month.
You just won right there, because you are the only person I have run into so far that I'm usually the one telling people, ditch the car, Uber only. You have no idea how much money that sucker's costing you. It's great. Anyway, I'm a little excited about what you just said there.
It's awesome, actually. Just to talk about it for a second, first of all, if you have that opportunity, oh man, what an opportunity for people who aren't financially independent. If you can Uber only, because think about it, you're only paying for the car when you need it. You're not paying the insurance, the registration, the oil changes, the maintenance, the gas, the car cost, whatever it costs. I probably spend 1/10 of what I was paying for my vehicle.
Preach. People look at me funny when I say it, and they're like, "Well, I don't understand." Like, where'd you park your car? I don't have a car. What do you mean? And I know you've seen it. Anyway, I can't believe you said that right now. I am so you're like my newfound best friend right there, because no one takes the time. I did the math. That's exactly what it was. I did the math, and I'm like, this doesn't make sense. And then because I like to measure our productive capability on a per minute basis. So I go, okay, cool. That means if I'm sitting at this red light behind the wheel, even if it's only 60 seconds, heaven forbid should it be 2 minutes, that could cost us $10, $20, $30. Because that's what my time is worth when I'm out there actually producing and my brain is doing what it's supposed to do. Of course I'm going to Uber. It's cheaper. It's just, go ahead.
A value add for you parents out there. My kids have been in the car, and they have heard so many discussions with me and Iraqis who were in Iraq during the war. People from Ethiopia, Kenya, Korea. I spoke to a guy the other day, actually, who was in Ethiopia who works in mining, and he's like, I only come here for the winters to work. And I was like, what? I was like, I've never heard of this, such a thing. And, but so many people, I mean, the other day we were in the car with a Palestinian. And I tell you that is not something I ever factored in on the cost, but what a value that my children are being exposed to so many different people, and just having these very free and conversations about what it's like in other places. So that's been a huge blessing that I never factored in.
Yes, absolutely. There's a number of those things. So speaking of children, knowing what you now know, having gone through the process, would you say there's something that what are you doing intentionally to help your kids have a leg up that maybe you didn't have, or that others would want to know about in some way, shape, or form, so that they can get ahead?
Yeah, the last chapter of the book is heavily focused on children, and it's because I was borderline gonna write a whole book on it, and because I'm very passionate about it. I have a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 9-year-old. We homeschool our children, so like they're like totally wow. Like they go to every investment deal, they'll go to every property. My son, the other day I was at a table with somebody and we were talking about a stock, and he's 9 years old and he stops playing. He's like over there listening because he's got his Scottrade account. Which actually is now TD Ameritrade because they took it over. But I'm a big believer in teaching the children about money and finance, and they're involved in all aspects of anything I do. I share with them. I talk to them about it. We regularly read Rich Dad, Poor Dad as a family and have discussions about it. There is on our kitchen table right now, cash flow for kids for the little ones,
yes,
and cash flow for adults for the big ones. And that is teaching them how to run their life. And basically, it is the real game of life that I want them to understand. They watch Shark Tank. It's a big deal around this house. Yes. And for my girls, they really liked Lori. So luckily, yes, I went out and grabbed Lori's book, and now we're reading Lori's book. I think parents, honestly, just going out of their way to really show the kids. And then I think the most important thing you can do for the children is really teach them about the delayed gratification. So, let's say they got a bunch of money for their birthday. First of all, my kids are required to save and invest 50% of everything they make. And then with the other half, they can spend it, but I don't let them, we don't jump in the car and go to Target right away. Or I'll do crazy things like, even though it's a pain in the butt for dad, I will drive across town to shop Barbie, because I want to teach them that you should get the best price, and you should not just buy something. Or let's say we go all across town to buy something that they wanted and it's not there at the store. An impulse for the parent is, pick something else. No, I don't want them to be conditioned to settle or just spend for spending's sake. Mm-hmm. I want them to spend smartly and strategically. So really teaching them, my daughter's gonna have a birthday in a week here, and I'm sure she'll let's say she gets $100 and she wants to go spend the 50. I'll make up excuses why we're not gonna go to the store for a few days, and say, hey, go on, shop online, look online, and we'll go to Walmart on Friday. I want that muscle to be worn down to a nub, that consumer muscle. I want to fight that trigger mentality that, I've got money, let's go out and spend it, because that's what people do. And they don't even know they're doing it. So I really fight impulse buying, and even really teach them to wait. And then the funnest part, of course, as a cash flow dad is, they buy stocks that pay dividends, and I always check the box to have the check mailed to the house. So nothing like going to the mail and saying, hey kids, you got a check from Disney. And they think it's the coolest thing. What a great habit to teach the children, by the way.
Yeah, I there's so much of that I like, and I hadn't considered giving them a 50. I like what you said, the 50% requirement, not making it optional at this stage, because I was making it optional at this moment, and I like the idea of making it a requirement. Then later, letting it be optional. Now that you said it out loud, I'm like, that's a good idea.
But it'll be habitual.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I like about it. It forms a habit right now when it doesn't. Well, honestly, when it just doesn't matter. But such that it doesn't feel like a sacrifice later when they're in the process of doing it. Now, earlier you mentioned that you were speaking to a recent subscriber. Tell us a little bit about future money trends, and very specifically, what is it, why is it, but most importantly, that was the superhero moment, right? I mean, every person, you realize at some moment you have something special, and then you have a choice, and you chose to share.
Initially it was created just to kind of track my wife and I's progress in our journey to becoming, financially independent. And, it was a very hobby type website, hobby type business. And ultimately, it became something that was able to really directly touch people and help people. We were able to monetize it with advertisements. And that's how it's monetized to this day. So to this day, it's still free. There are advertisements on the websites and then in the middle of the emails, but it's all free content. I share funny stories and sad stories from what my wife and I did. And I also share everything I've learned and I'm learning. And also I reveal exactly what I'm investing money in. So I'll give you an example. I have not purchased the company as I do this show, but today an email is going to go out about a company named Amley Capital. Might be familiar with you guys because you guys like real estate.
Did you say Amley?
Huh?
As in the apartment people?
Yeah. It's a mortgage company.
Yeah.
So it pays a 12% dividend. Essentially pays $1 per share, and it trades for like $8.30 a share right now. So I'm going to buy that, but before I buy that, I send that to the subscribers and let them know this is why I like this. This is why I'm going to do it. This is what its role is, because I'll buy speculative things too, and I'll put this is very speculative, or this is cash flow related, or I'll remind people, hey, just because it's real estate, it's still a stock. Stock market goes down. This is going to go down too. It's funny, people do the same thing. Like they buy gold stocks and they're like, hey, why did it crash with the Dow? Well, because it's a stock. It's still a stock. So, I like to disclose and share what I'm buying because this is my hobby, my life. I just love finding new ideas. So I share anything. And same thing with the things we teach the kids or share with the kids. We're big into we do a lot of whole life policies to dual compound our cash.
Yep.
And we share those type of ideas. And, so that's what you'll find at futuremoneytrends.com.
Daniel, we have never met, but we're so similar.
I think we will, because we're only about an hour away from each other. And I actually end up there like at least twice a month.
Yes, we have to do something like that because I'm like, yeah, we do that too. Yeah, yeah. And so it's just amazing, and it's even more so. And again, from our side of things, Amley is actually one of those companies that I prefer to do business with, because when we're running short-term rentals and whatnot, their product is very good at the end of the day. So it's just some of it. So it was interesting that you said what you just said there. So that was also obviously that there's just so many crossovers right now that it's just like, what? How have we not run into each other before? So it is what it is. Now, as we wind down, I'm sure there's a number of people who want to follow, find out more, keep things going, keep this conversation going, because again, if I'm not saving for retirement, what is it that I'm supposed to do then? What's going to be the best way for them to track you down, find out more about what you've got going on online?
If you go to futuremoneytrends.com/save, they can read the intro to my book, which starts in a bankruptcy attorney's office with my wife, and the first chapter, which defines what wealth was or is to me, because everybody's going to have their own individual definition. And if they want to continue reading the book, they can, and at Amazon they can purchase it, and then it also subscribed to the Weekly Wealth Digest, which gives you basically exactly what I was saying, the stories and things we've learned, as well as things we're actively involved with right now.
Excellent. Now, I like to ask this next question because I'm always curious the answers the entrepreneurs give me, because it's always, unique and different. There's a number of individuals who have listened this far, and they were in one position, when they first started, and they're probably at a new position right now. They're at what I like to call the precipice of decision. And they're like, okay, that's it. Daniel said these things. I believe now. You know what? I can cut back. I mean, I might not want to get rid of my dog, but I can cut back. I can make some changes. I can do this. We can do this. Or maybe there's a husband or a spouse or a wife who's now encouraged and willing to talk to their husband a little bit more about some of these things. But here's the challenge, Daniel. When we as humans get to this precipice of decision, we often have a companion, and that companion comes in the form of a voice. And it's a voice that reminds us how it didn't work last time, why it probably won't work this time. And you're going to do real estate. You've never been able to save money your entire life. And all of those things. And for some people, they're related to that voice. So my question to you is as follows. Let's pretend that this time it's going to be different. This time they're going to follow through. They're actually going to do what you suggest. And they're going to do so in the next 24 to 48 hours. What would you suggest that they do?
The first thing you should do is write down everything that you have as far as your assets and your current income and your current expenses, which is difficult and a monstrosity for some people because they don't like to even look at the numbers. It's very easy. Get the last 3 months of your credit card bill or your bank statements. Start looking over what are your realistic expenses. A lot of people will actually be surprised. Take a highlighter with you about things that they might be spending on or things that might actually be being deducted out of their account that they didn't even know about. I mean, believe me, I've got all that kind of stuff, nonsense going out for iTunes because my kids will click on apps and stuff. So find out exactly what you were spending and what you were actually earning and where you can make immediate improvements. In order to start purchasing cash flow. And then this is more on a spiritual level, but I'd really, to make sure you can find this, I would write down, and all my kids have it. I have one in the mirror, and it's kind of a declared statement, but for people who are just starting out, I would